It was a year since the Human Pacification Act had been passed. Fearing the race everyone called the most dangerous in the universe, the Galactic Council had put forward a bill that the humans should give up all weapons. No one questioned why the humans were so quick to agree. But it was done. They decommissioned all of their military hardware and gave up all of their guns and bombs. The rest of the Galactic Council had breathed a collective sigh of relief. To celebrate, the Council threw a demilitarization gala. Everyone was there. The High Ambassador of the Krell flicked a claw toward the viewscreen, where a sleek, unarmed Terran freighter drifted peacefully. Look at them, Vax. Not a single spinal mount. Not even a point defense turret. We didn't just disarm them. We declawed the galaxy's most dangerous predator. Ambassador Vax of the Unified Hive chuckled, the sound like dry leaves rustling. The Terran Peace Treaty. Our finest achievement. By the time they realize a modular sensor array isn't a weapon, they'll have forgotten how to fight entirely. They've spent the last decade building tractors, for heaven's sake. To the peace of the powerless, the Krell toasted, raising a glass of violet nectar. The Treaty of Soul is a masterpiece, Ambassador Vax purred, tapping a claw against the digital readout of Earth's zeroed-out military budget. They've turned their swords into plowshares, quite literally. They're exporting combines and tractors now. A neutered species, the Krell ambassador agreed, swirling his drink. I almost feel a twinge of pity. Without warships, they are simply prey. The doors hissed open. Attach Pym didn't just walk in. He ran in looking like he was trying to outrun a Tarzan shadow beast. He dropped a thick stack of data slates onto the crystalline table. Sirs, he said breathlessly, we have a terrible problem. The humans. What is it? Pym? Have the prey broke their tractors. The two ambassadors chuckled at one another. Sirs, Pym wheezed. The prey just deleted the Black Nebula Syndicate. All of them. The pattern of industrial accidents. Vax chuckled. Impossible. The Syndicate has a fleet of stolen Council cruisers. The humans have cargo haulers. They had cargo haulers, sir, Pym said, trembling as he activated the holoprojector. Please look at the redshift incident from last week. A pirate interdictor tried to stop a Terran medical frigate. The humans didn't fire a shot. They simply disconnected the ship's waste recycling magnets, realigned them using a spare car battery, and projected a localized gravity well inside the pirate's bridge. The ship didn't explode. It folded into the shape of a crushed soda can. The Krell ambassador blinked. A car battery. And then there's the Nebula Fog event, Pym continued, his voice rising in octave. A raiding party boarded a human mining station. The humans didn't have rifles. They had fire suppression systems. They didn't just put out the fires. They tweaked the chemical mix to create a non-toxic, super-slick polymer. The pirates spent 6 hours sliding helplessly into the industrial trash compactor because they couldn't get any traction on the floor. The humans watched and ate. Something they called it popcorn. Pym swiped to the last file, a distress signal from the most feared warlord in the sector, Captain Crawl. Crawl's fleet intercepted a human luxury liner yesterday, Pym whispered. He sent a boarding party. 2 minutes later, he broadcast a sector-wide emergency burst. He wasn't asking for help. He was warning everyone. Intercepted audio transcript. Retreat. Cut the docking umbilical. I don't care if the airlock is still open. They don't have blasters. They have a pressure washer loaded with industrial degreaser and a pressurized nail gun. One of them is chasing my lieutenant with a heavy-duty stapler. They are turning the life support into a bong. Pull back. And here's the latest report from the Zor 7 corridor. A pirate fleet, 3 dreadnoughts. They attacked a Terran grain hauler. No, sir. Pym squeaked, his tablet shaking. The dreadnoughts are gone. They were neutralized by a long-range agricultural irrigation system. The reality check. The two ambassadors froze. A water hose? The Krell asked flatly. Not exactly, sir, Pym whispered, bringing up the sensor logs. The humans took the high-pressure ice mining lasers, strictly civilian grade, and used a roll of duct tape and a kitchen microwave to bypass the safety limiters. They didn't shoot the pirates. They hyperboiled the propellant inside the pirates' own fuel lines from 3 light minutes away. The Krell looked at the screen. That's a violation of thermodynamics. The humans call it overclocking, sir, Pym replied. And when the survivors tried to board the ship, the Terran cook inverted the artificial gravity in the docking bay from -15 g to +15 g in a rhythmic pulse. The boarding party was turned into a fine organic slurry before they could even cycle the airlock. The silence in the room was heavy. The ambassadors looked at the Treaty of Sol, the document that had stripped the humans of standard weaponry. We didn't disarm them, Vax whispered, his scales turning a dull, horrified gray. We just forced them to get creative. Exactly, sir, Pym said, staring at the screen. The pirates have a new rule now. If you see a human ship, you don't scan for weapons. You scan for tools. If the ship has a toolbox and a motivated human, you leave. You leave immediately. Pym's voice cracked on the word immediately, a sound of pure, bureaucratic despair. So, Pym? Extend the disarmament protocol to include those materials we tried, Ambassador Vax. I drafted a supplementary list. I banned high-tensile carbon fibers, industrial lubricants, and even pressurized steam valves. Do you know what the humans on the SS Daisy did when the Raiders of the Void cut their power? The Krell ambassador leaned in, his mandibles twitching. They surrendered. They used frozen bags of peas, Pym whispered. They depressurized a cargo tube, used a fire extinguisher as a propellant, and turned a shipment of frozen legumes into a kinetic bombardment array. At orbital velocities, a frozen pea has the impact force of a Gauss slug. They perforated the pirate hull with side dishes. That's the whole point, sirs. It wouldn't matter. They would weaponize something else, anything else. It's in their genes. You see a table. They 23 ways to turn it into a lethal weapon, or worse, a weapon of mass humiliation. Vax looked down at the heavy, crystalline table between them. You're being hyperbolic, Pym. It's a flat surface with 4 supports. How could a human possibly? 23 ways, sir, Pym interrupted, his eyes wide. I asked a Terran janitor about this exact model yesterday. Within 6 seconds, he had explained how to shear the legs to create 4 serrated pikes. Use the crystalline top as a refractive lens for a low-output heat lamp to create a localized thermal beam. Rig the internal heating element to overload, creating a fragmentation shrapnel trap. Pym swallowed hard. And then he started talking about the Home Alone maneuver, which involves a bucket of cleaning solvent and a staircase. I had to make him stop because I started feeling physically ill. The weapon of mass humiliation. And the humiliation? The Krell asked, almost afraid of the answer. The sparkle bomb incident of the Orion Belt, Pym said, playing a video file. The screen showed a terrifying pirate captain, a 3-meter-tall reptilian warlord, sobbing as he was escorted off a human transport. He was covered from head to toe in a microfine, iridescent pink dust that seemed to be bonded to his scales at a molecular level. The humans didn't kill them, Pym explained. They used a ventilation fan, a tub of industrial adhesive, and 5 cases of biodegradable craft glitter. The pirates couldn't see, they couldn't breathe without inhaling unicorn dust, and most importantly, they couldn't be taken seriously. The captain's own crew laughed him out of the airlock. He's currently in a psych ward trying to scrub the fabulousness off his soul. He'll never command a ship again. The impossible protocol. Pym slumped into a chair, ignoring protocol. You can't ban materials, sirs. To a human, the entire periodic table is a weapon. The laws of physics are just suggestions they ignore when they're annoyed. If you take away their tools, they'll use their clothes. If you take away their clothes, they'll use their own hair. If you lock them in a padded room, they'll find a way to make the padding explosive. The ambassadors looked at each other. The Treaty of Sol, once their greatest pride, now felt like a suicide note. So, Vax said quietly, what is the recommendation of the Security Subcommittee? Pym looked up, his face grim. We stop trying to disarm them. We start trying to make sure they never ever get bored. Because a bored human is the most dangerous substance in the known galaxy. As if on cue, an elderly human female strolled up to the group. Our ambassadors. I hope I am not interrupting to celebrate the first anniversary of the Terran Peace Treaty. I would like to give you a gift, a token of goodwill. The human ambassador, a grandmotherly woman named Evelyn who looked like she'd never even raised her voice, presented the council with a small crate. Since we no longer have a need for heavy industrial foundries or tactical shipyards, Evelyn beamed, gesturing to a small, wooden crate. We've pivoted our economy. We're focusing on home improvement. The ambassadors and Pym all looked at the crate as if it contained a dormant supernova. Home improvement? Vax asked, his voice a cautious whisper. Exactly. Evelyn pried open the crate. Inside sat a sleek, orange and black handheld device with a battery pack and a rotating head. It's a multi-tool. It saws, it sands, it scrapes, it oscillates at 20,000 vibrations per minute, and it comes with 42 interchangeable heads. The Krell ambassador leaned back so fast he nearly tipped his chair. 20,000 vibrations? Scrapes? Interchangeable heads. Oh, and the best part, Evelyn added, her eyes twinkling with genuine warmth. It's cordless. And we've included a quick charge station that uses a modified capacitor we found in an old microwave. The panic. The council members stared at the tool. In their eyes, they weren't looking at a gift. They were looking at a portable ultrasonic hull breacher, a localized seismic generator, a device that, in the hands of a bored human teenager, could probably be rigged to broadcast "Never Gonna Give You Up" across every secure military frequency in the quadrant. Thank you, Ambassador. Oh, you silly thing. Don't stand on ceremony. We're old friends. It's just Evelyn, thank you. Evelyn, Vax managed to choke out, his scales turning a translucent white. It's lovely. We shall put it in the special vault. Wonderful. Evelyn said, patting his clawed hand. If you need any tips on how to use it, my nephew Dave is a safety consultant nearby. He says you can do things with an oscillating saw that would make a physicist cry. The closing note. As Evelyn walked out, humming a jaunty tune, the two ambassadors sat in the deafening silence of the chamber. Vax, the Krell whispered. Yes? Is there any way to give them their warships back? Please? If they have big, obvious guns, at least we know where the danger is. Vax looked at the orange multi-tool vibrating slightly on the table as the quick-charge capacitor hummed with an ominous, human energy. It's too late, Vax whispered. They've discovered DIY. May the stars have mercy on us all. Meanwhile, light years away, the Galactic Naval Academy has a mandatory class called Terran Physics, the Square Peg Doctrine. The Xeno professor stands before a room of elite cadets, projecting an image of a lithium hydroxide canister wrapped in a plastic bag and a cardboard flight manual. Look at this, the professor whispers, his tentacles trembling. The atmospheric scrubbers failed. The mathematics said they were dead. The vacuum had already claimed them. But the humans, they didn't pray. They didn't signal for a dignified end. A cadet raises a hand. Sir, is that a sock? It is a garment for a foot. Yes, the professor sighs. They used a foot sleeve, a map, and adhesive strips to trick the life support system into working. They bullied the vacuum of space into letting them live. This is why we signed the treaty. You can take away a human's pulse cannon, but as long as they have a tube and some tape, they are never truly disarmed. The Xeno historian, High Archivist Thrum, stood before the great library of the Galactic Council, his skin fluctuating between a contemplative blue and a terrified violet. Behind him, a massive holographic timeline of Terran space flight shimmered in the air. Fellow scholars, Thrum began, his voice echoing in the vast chamber. We have long studied the Human Disarmament Treaty as a triumph of diplomacy. We thought that by removing their warships, we removed their teeth. We were wrong. We didn't remove their weapons. We removed their limitations. He tapped a button, and the image of a 1960s-era Saturn V rocket appeared. 1. The controlled explosion phase. Look at this. Thrum pointed to the massive fuel tanks. Most species reach the stars through elegant gravity manipulation or ion drifts. Humans? Humans decided to build a giant metal cylinder, fill it with high-grade explosives, sit on top of it, and light the fuse. They didn't fly to their moon. They threw themselves at it and missed the ground just enough to stay in orbit. A murmur of horror ran through the assembly. And when it went wrong, Thrum continued, the hologram shifting to the Apollo 13 CO2 scrubber. They didn't surrender to the cold. They didn't accept the math. They looked at a pile of trash and said, "We can make this breathe." In human history, this is considered an inspiring success. To us, it should be a warning. They are a species that treats the laws of physics like a first draft that needs aggressive editing. 2. The Hold My Beer era. The timeline fast-forwarded through the Voyager probes. They threw a gold record into the dark just to see if anyone would play it, to the first interstellar jumps. The Treaty of Sol was signed because we saw their wars. But look at their civilian history. They launched a car, a wheeled, ground-based transport, into deep space just to prove they could. Why? No strategic reason. No scientific necessity. Simply because a human was bored and had the spare parts. Thrum leaned over the podium, his eyes wide. I recently spoke to a Terran historian about their Spirit and Opportunity rovers on Mars. These machines were designed to last 90 days. One of them lasted 15 years. When it got stuck in the sand, the humans didn't give up. They spent weeks in a laboratory, simulating the sand, spinning wheels, and wiggling the robot until it climbed out. They are the only species in the galaxy that will spend a decade of their lives trying to save a toaster because they gave it a name. 3. The conclusion of the lecture. Thrum closed the holographic display. The room was silent. "We took away their dreadnoughts," he whispered. "But by doing so, we turned every human civilian into a potential insurgent engineer. We forced the people who rescued Apollo 13 to apply that same duct tape and desperation logic to, well, everything else." He pulled a small, innocuous object from his robe, a human Swiss Army knife. "I found this in the pocket of a human tourist who was visiting the council gardens. It has a blade, a saw, a bottle opener, and a device for removing stones from horses' hooves." When I asked him why he needed it in a high-security diplomatic zone, he told me, "You never know when you'll need to fix a sink or overthrow a government." Thrum placed the knife on the podium as if it were a live grenade. "My recommendation to the council is simple. Give them the warships back. Give them the biggest, loudest, most expensive cannons we can find. If they have guns, they'll use guns. But if they don't, they'll use their imaginations. And frankly, I'd much rather be shot by a pulse laser than fixed by a human with a multitool and a roll of gray adhesive tape." And on a planet, far away from the gala, the SWAT commander, a four-armed CH-Thoc with enough tactical plating to stop a small meteor, slammed a claw onto the holographic map of the Krell 4 mining colony. "The kidnappers have fortified the primary ventilation hub," the commander growled. "They have seized the thermal detonators and have a clear line of sight on the main elevator. If we breach with standard plasma rifles, we risk a gas pocket ignition. If we wait, the hostages suffocate. It is a tactical stalemate." The room was filled with the galaxy's elite, sharp-eyed marksmen, tech splicers, and heavy ordnance specialists. And then there was Dave. Dave was a safety consultant from Earth, currently wearing a high-vis vest and holding a lukewarm cup of synthetic coffee. He'd been quiet the whole time, mostly because the Council's no human weapons mandate meant he wasn't even allowed to carry a blunt pencil. "Wait," Dave said, his voice cutting through the tense silence. "Did you say there's mining equipment still down there? Like, the heavy-duty stuff?" The commander looked at him, his secondary eyes blinking in confusion. "Yes. Industrial rock borers, high-pressure hydraulic presses, and about 6 kilometers of reinforced copper wiring. Why? We can't get a squad down there to use them." Dave didn't answer. A slow, terrifyingly symmetrical smile spread across his face. It wasn't the smile of a soldier. It was the smile of a man who had once built a functional go-kart out of a lawnmower and a stolen shopping cart. "Commander," Dave said, setting his coffee down, "is the internal comms system still active?" Yes, but the kidnappers are monitoring it. Anything we say, they. Perfect, Dave interrupted. I just need you to patch me through to the head of the miners. Tell him to find the arc welder 5000 and a crate of those magnetic ball bearings they use for the crushers. The SWAT team's lead engineer, a spindly creature with a genius-level IQ, went pale. Human Dave, an arc welder is a tool for joining metal. It has no range. It is not a weapon. It's a weapon if I tell them how to wrap the copper wiring around the welder's output to create a makeshift railgun, Dave whispered, his eyes gleaming with a manic light. And those hydraulic presses? If they bypass the pressure governor with a piece of chewing gum, they don't just crush rocks. They turn into high-velocity air cannons. We aren't going to breach that room, Commander. We're going to turn the room itself into a giant, angry kinetic battery. The commander stepped back. That is an atrocity. That violates at least 4 sections of the Interstellar Safety Code. Oh, it gets worse, Dave said, leaning over the map. Tell the miners to look for the industrial-grade degreaser. If they mix that with the oxidizer from the emergency air tanks and use a standard flashlight battery as a spark gap. Dave mimicked an explosion with his hands. Human, the commander whispered, his scales clattering in genuine fear. They are hostage takers. They are criminals. But they are still living beings. What you are suggesting is, it's not warfare. It's creative demolition. Dave's smile widened. It was the look of a man who had been told he couldn't have a gun, and had suddenly realized that the entire universe was made of spare parts. You guys call it a hostage situation, Dave said, cracking his knuckles. I call it an unscheduled science fair. Now, patch me through. I need to explain to the miners how to turn a vacuum cleaner into a vacuum-sealed shrapnel launcher. The SWAT team didn't move. They didn't even breathe. They just watched as Dave, a man with no armor, no rank, and a safety consultant badge, prepared to dismantle a professional mercenary company using nothing but a toolbox and a lack of supervision. The vault was located on a moon's-forsaken rock in the Gamma Quadrant, protected by 3 layers of biometric scanners and a clerk who hadn't seen sunlight in 40 solar cycles. It was as far away from the civilized space as it was possible to get. The file wasn't even digital. Digital files can be hacked. Digital files can be leaked. This was physical parchment, tucked inside a dusty binder labeled Subsector 7, Non-Mechanical Soil Aeration Techniques, Volume 4. It sat between a thrilling treatise on earthworm migration and a blueprint for a low-impact shovel. It was the only place in the galaxy where the truth about the Krell for mining liberation could rest without causing a sector-wide panic. The report was brief, written in the shaky handwriting of a CH-THOC commander who had resigned his commission 3 hours after the mission. The incident report, file number 88 Omega read. Upon entering the ventilation hub, we did not find a battlefield. We found a scene. The kidnappers, hardened mercenaries with over 2 decades of combat experience, were found huddling in the center of the room, weeping. They had dropped their thermal detonators. They refused to pick them up. One of them pointed at a standard industrial floor buffer and screamed when it hummed. It appears the human, Dave, had instructed the miners to modify the buffer's centrifugal motor using a discarded fan belt and a heavy-duty magnet. It wasn't a weapon, it was a kinetic disruption frisbee that bypassed their energy shields and hummed at a frequency that caused permanent inner vertigo. The hostages were found eating sandwiches. They had used the high-pressure hydraulic lines to create a makeshift espresso machine that also doubled as a flamethrower. They seemed disappointed we arrived so early. At the very end of the top-secret file, there was a handwritten note from the Grand Inquisitor of the Galactic Council. Asterisk regarding the human problem. The disarmament treaty is to remain in effect. Do not, under any circumstances, allow the humans to know we are afraid of their tools. If they find out we consider their hardware stores to be armories, they might start getting creative with their office supplies. P.S. Ban all staplers from the council chambers. Effective immediately. Asterisk. The safety transfer. Back at the sector headquarters, the elite SWAT team was undergoing a massive reorganization. The lead engineer, once a specialist in precision laser breaching, was seen clutching a crate of grade A military plastic explosives like it was a security blanket. "You're transferring to the demolitions division?" a colleague asked, confused. "That's high risk. One wrong wire and you're stardust." The engineer looked at him with hollow, haunted eyes. "High risk? My friend, an explosive is predictable. It has a fuse. It has a yield. It does exactly what the manual says it will do." He shuddered, looking toward the Terran embassy across the courtyard. I watched a human Dave explain how to turn a pressurized canister of shaving cream and a handful of gravel into a claymore mine. I watched him smile as he realized the mining colony had a surplus of rubber bands. I don't want to be tactical anymore. I want things that just go boom and stay gone. I can't live in a world where a toaster is a tactical threat. Unaware of these events, a high-ranking council inspector walking through a disarmed human sector. He sees that graffiti, "Murphy was a human," scrawled in permanent, industrial-grade sealant across a structural support beam. He turns to his human guide, his voice trembling. "Who is this? Murphy? And why is he shouted on your walls?" The human just shrugs, wiping grease off a wrench. "Oh, he's just the guy who realized that if there's a wrong way to do something, someone eventually will. We just like to be ready for it." The inspector looks at the ready humans. He sees they've reinforced their life support with garden hoses and replaced their door sensors with pressure plates made of spring-loaded spoons. He realizes then, humans don't fear failure. They expect it. They've spent their entire history living in a house built by Murphy, and they've learned how to weaponize the rubble. The council eventually realized that while one human with a problem is a threat, two humans collaborating on a solution is a localized tear in the fabric of reality. It became known as the Terran constant, often referred to in council physics textbooks as the Evelyn Dave singularity. The formal theorem, the law of multiplicative entropy. The council science division formally codified it as follows. C sat smiley H. T. Where C is the total chaos generated. H is the factorial of the number of humans present, accounting for the fact that they don't just add to each other, they egg each other on. T is the toolbox coefficient, the probability of a human saying, "I have a better idea," or "I saw this on the internet once." The internal memo. The council's chief engineer once submitted a desperate report after witnessing 3 humans trying to fix a stuck elevator. I watched them for 6 minutes. They did not call for a technician. One human, male, Dave, produced a pocket knife. The second human, female, Evelyn, produced a vial of peppermint oil and a crochet hook. The third human, identity unknown, simply stood there and said, "You know, if we bypass the weight sensor, this thing will go twice as fast." By the time I could intervene, the elevator was no longer an elevator. It had been converted into a pressurized railcar capable of atmospheric exit. When I asked why, they told me they were tired of waiting. Conclusion: never allow 2 or more humans to look at the same broken object simultaneously. They will not fix it. They will evolve it into something the universe was never meant to hold.